All right, good morning again. Hello, I'm Geraldine Weiser, Director of Business Development here at Corporate College, and I want to welcome you to today's session. As we wait for the presentation to start, I just want to let you know that after today's session, a copy of the presentation will be emailed to you along with our survey. And we really look forward to receiving your feedback. It's very important to us. We really want to make sure that these programs are very impactful for you. And we're always looking for improvement, continuous improvement. If you haven't already, please go ahead and do an audio check on your device. Make sure the volume controls are set to your comfort. And as a reminder, everyone is muted throughout today's session. So uh, we will rely heavily on reviewing the chat box. We really look forward to hearing from you, hearing your comments and questions. It's important to remember, though, when you enter comments into the chat box, even if you send it to all panelists, only the panelists, Jim, Dawn, and myself, will be able to see that. You will be able to see your own messages, but you won't be able to see other attendees' messages. So we want you to be ready to chat. Go ahead, and if you haven't already, expand the chat box by clicking on the arrow just to the left of the word chat. Make sure it's expanded. You see the address box where it's labeled to, and please make sure that that is addressed to all panelists. All right, so with that, good morning again, and thank you so much for joining Corporate College's Live with the Experts. Each session is really geared towards providing you relevant information and tools and topics to support you and really set you up for success. Adjusting to this new norm is really a daily occurrence now, and shifting to this new reality of remote working and learning and living can be very challenging. So, Tri-C is committed to serving you in this time of rapid change by providing actionable items and resources to help you and your team not only succeed but thrive wherever they're located, whether they're still at the work site or working remotely. Our webinar series is one of Corporate College's newest resources to prepare the workforce to overcome these challenges and achieve both personal and business goals. Our series consists of 4 themes, with today's session focusing on leadership, virtual leadership through quality. Other sessions focus on working remotely, navigating a transition, personal health and well-being, because we've got to be able to perform at our best. And as many of you already know, Corporate College really has, I think, the best talent group here of facilitators and subject matter experts. And no different, we're so happy today to welcome back Jim Odom. He's a fantastic presenter, and actually it was my facilitator for my yellow belt class. So a little bit more about Jim. He was employed at Delphi Packard Electric Systems for about 30 years prior to starting his own consulting practice. For Corporate College, he's really taught a variety of programs in ASQ certification, process improvement, all the belts, Lean Six Sigma, yellow, green, and black belt classes. And Jim is very much involved in ASQ. He's served as the educational chairperson, treasurer, and chairperson for the American Society of Quality section in Youngstown. He's also been recognized with a very distinguished title as an ASQ Fellow now. And as if he has any spare time, in his spare time, he's also authored the book Continuous Improvement Kept Simple, Replacing Chaos with Order and Stability. And oh my goodness, can we use that now, right? So with that, I am so pleased to turn the presentation over and welcome Jim Odom. Hi, Jim. Good morning again.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Jerry, for that introduction, and good morning, everybody. Today's session is going to be about what can QI macros do for you. And QI macros is another statistical package that we use at Corporate College. We use it primarily in our green belt training, but we are now transitioning to using it in our black belt training as well. And I'm going to share with you here in just a little bit the price of QI macros. And once you hear the price and what the capability of it is, then you're going to be you'll understand why we want to transition then to using QI macros at the black belt level. As I said, we use it for 100% of our green belt training. And I'm going to tell you, in my experience in using QI macros, is probably a great tool for 90% of all black belts. That being because of the fact that it does all the statistical analysis that most black belts get into. And then also it allows you to use templates that are very much in conjunction with the Lean Six Sigma process. So a little bit of the background. This was developed by a person by the name of Jay Arthur. He's a noted author in Lean Six Sigma. I looked at his bio here in the last few days, and he has authored at least 6 books in Lean Six Sigma. Uh, the primary advantage of this is the price. Right now, the price of a perpetual license is $300. That's in contrast with Minitab, which a lot of companies use for Lean Six Sigma, and the price of a perpetual license for Minitab is approaching $2,500. So you can see $300 versus $2,500. There's quite a bit of difference in money, and not that much difference in the capability. We'll talk about the capability more as we go along. Okay, I've broken this presentation up into the different phases of Lean Six Sigma. And what I thought I could do then is to highlight some of the things that QI Macros is able to do for you. At the end of these slides, we'll then go to the, I'll show you a QI Macros overview. We'll go through, it's an Excel-based program, and I'll take you through all the different drop downs and let you see some of the tools that are incorporated into that process. Once we go through the overview, then I want to show you some examples. We'll do some examples on some variable data. We'll show you how to do a capability analysis, and another example will show you the one-way analysis of variance. So here's a define phase. As you can see, there's a lot of tools from the project charter, which every Lean Six Sigma team should put together. There's a template for SIPOC, which is a supplier input process output customer template. The SWOT diagram, you can see, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's the visual shown off to the right there. You can do affinity diagrams, which are great for when you're brainstorming with a team to decide on, your course of action and so on. Decision tree helps you to scope your project along with the SIPOC. Mind mapping does some great things for you as far as putting your thoughts together on maybe the different elements of Lean Six Sigma and some of the things that questions you may want to ask as you go through the different phases. One of the most important tools I know of is the stakeholder analysis. And it's a great tool to help you understand the different wants and needs of the stakeholders. You're going to have team members from different departments typically, and each of those department heads and stakeholders will have different wants and needs. So it's a great tool to do that. Of course, in the define phase, we always use the voice of the customer matrix to understand what our customer wants, what the different CTQs that customer wants. Quality function deployment is this is a template that's incorporated into QI macros that allows you then to understand in depth what your customers' wants and needs are. And then a Gantt chart is just a simple tool to help you to put together a project timeline. How many weeks or days for define, how many weeks or days for measure, analyze, improve, and control. So that's the tools that primarily fit into the define phase. Let's now go to the measure phase. In the measure phase, we really get into starting to collect data to understand our process better. And so there's all different kinds of ways to map a process. Anywhere from simple flow charts. You can do swim lane diagrams where you look at different functions versus different activities that those functions perform. You can use value stream maps, where a value stream is from the time a customer wants a product or service until you receive your money for that product or service. Simple spaghetti diagrams. This is just a way to document how material flows through your operation or the movement of people within your operation. A great tool to show how you can provide more value by eliminating steps and eliminating motion in transportation. There's relationships in systems diagrams. FMEA, failure mode and effects analysis. This is another template that you can use within the measure phase. Of course, measure is all about understanding your measurement system. And so you can look at the gauge R&R, the gauge repeatability and reproducibility. And MSA is measurement system analysis. In measure phase, we get into the sample size. How big a sample do we need in order to be statistically confident in the results? And then there's some check sheet capability. So that's the measure phase. I've broken up the analyze phase into several different components. Here is just some of the things that QI macros can do for you from a statistical standpoint. It does all the graphical summary, and you can get means, medians, modes, standard deviation, variance, all the different graphical tools. It does descriptive statistics, which I just named a few of them. It does F and T test, proportions test. I want to compare, for instance, if I reduce my percentage from 10% to 5%, is that statistically significant? Non-parametric tests. Now, these non-parametric tests are tests on the median or other non-normal distributions. We might look at doing a test on the median, and there are different kinds of tests that can be used. Analysis of variance. You can do one-way and two-way analysis of variance, and then you can do also simple and polynomial regression. So that's from a statistical standpoint. This is just a few of the things that can be done in QI macros. There are other calculators within this analyze phase. Looking at how you can calculate defects per million opportunities, DPMO, the yield of your process, OEE, operational effectiveness and efficiency, is another one. Roll throughput yield. You can do process capability on normal and non-normal data. You can look at CP and CPK for between and within. And it also has another calculator where you just put your data in. If you don't know if it's normal or non-normal, Minitab will look at it, or QI macros will look at it and tell you automatically which best capability study will suit that. That's the looking at some of the calculators. And then from a charting standpoint, Of course, Pareto charts for attribute kind of data. You can do fishbone diagrams for in the analyzed phase when you're looking at the cause and effect diagram. It does simple run charts, box plots, sometimes called box and whisker charts, dot plots, just another way to look at data. You can look at multivariate charts. I find these very useful when I'm looking at what's causing a particular problem to be occurring, looking at different parts of the operation. Is it time dependent? Is it machine dependent? Is it person dependent? And so on. Scatter diagrams, just another way to look at how one variable affects another variable. And then, of course, histograms, looking at what the shape of a distribution is. So this is, just some of the different things that QI macros can do. You can see over on the right side, there's a Pareto chart, very similar to other Pareto charts that you've seen in other applications. Another is looking at this distribution that's shown here. It's got the predictive equation, and it also shows the correlation value R squared. All right, the improve phase. Once we go through define, measure, and analyze, we want to then start to think about what can we do once we found the root cause for our problem, what we're going to do then to improve it. And some different templates and tools that you can use in this particular phase are the Pew Concept Selection Matrix. This is a great tool to help you to evaluate different potential solutions to see which one is most effective. You can do something called a simple force field analysis, where you look at the pros and cons of a particular solution. Do the pros outweigh the cons? You can put together a checklist where, as in the improve phase, a lot of times you need a checklist in order to make sure that people don't forget the things that they need to do to make sure that solution works. Action plans, trees. This is a tool to help you look at potential outside of the box kind of solutions. And trees was developed by a fellow by the name of Altshuler that looked at all the patents that were done in Russia during a period of time. And he put those into basically 40 different principles. Of course, in the improve phase, we use design of experiments. In QI macros, you can do Taguchi design of experiments, full factorial, fractional factorial, and then screening experiments called Plackett-Berman experiments. So a lot of capability, a lot of good things that you can do in the improve phase. Okay, moving on now to the control phase. Control phase, we get into control charts, looking at different kinds of control charts for variables and attributes. There are some special control charts called cum sum and exponentially weighted moving average charts, EWMA. Of course, you can do control plans. There's a tool in there that allows you to do, or a template for 8D analysis. If some of you were involved with Ford or GM, it's used quite extensively in the automotive industry. And then an A3 is just a template that you can use in order to put the results of your project on a one page. So it's a nice tool to summarize a project and then either store the 8D or the A3 on some shared platform that everybody can get to see what you did with your project. So that's what's involved in QI macros. I'm going to drop out of the presentation here now, and I'm going to show you the QI macros in Excel and walk you through some of the different templates. Let me drop out here. I'm going to go to Excel, and hopefully now you can see my Excel. All right. There are different wizards, and I'll show you an example of this wizard here in just a little bit. The wizard helps you to summarize your data. So you'll see that in process here in just a little bit. There's statistical tools, descriptive statistics. You can do tests for normality, analysis of variance. It shows a single factor, two factor with replication, and two factor without replication. Different F and T tests, Levine's test or the F test for two sample variances. You can do, different kind of T test, one sample, here two sample for means, two sample assuming equal variances, unequal variances, and then a Z test, two samples for means. So that's some of the F and T test. Under regression and other statistics, you have the Box-Cox correlation, covariance, regression, and chi-squared, just to name a few. Okay. Let me go here to lean tools, different kinds of lean tools, flow charts and swim lanes. You can look at takt time, look at non-value added analysis, different value added flow analysis, and so on. Quite a bit of different ways to look at data or information. Under different kinds of diagrams, here's the mind map, got the relationship and systems diagrams, CTQ trees, and then a more in-depth lean analysis called a work breakdown structure. Different calculators. I mentioned these before. There's a calculator here for cost of poor quality, DPMO, the yield, OEE, return on investment calculator, which is very important for looking at what a project will save you versus maybe some expenditure that you might have. So doing some return on investment. Roll throughput yield. And down at the bottom is that sample size calculator that I talked about in the measure phase. Different improvement tools. You can see here the fishbone diagram, sometimes called Ishikawa diagram or cause and effect diagram. There's a cause and effect matrix. There is something there called a 5 whys, where you can look at it at 3 different levels. You can look at it as why the problem occurred, what allowed the problem to occur, and then what allowed from a system standpoint that allowed it to occur. Put together action plans. Here's a check sheet. Here are TRIZ down here at the bottom. So a lot of different tools you can use for improvement. Here's design of experiments, and here's the 8D and 5A3 report, APQP, Advanced Product Quality Planning Checklist. Some of you are involved with automotive. You're aware of those. Also the FMEA, also PPAP forms, production part approval process, and all the different forms that go along with that. So a lot of capability. Here's that house of quality that I was talking about earlier. the Pew concept selection matrix. So you can see a lot of uh, different templates that you can use. Planning in PM tools. Here's the Gantt chart, SciPoc. SciPoc uh, is a great tool for helping you focus your project, helping you to scope your project. So it's just a great tool that you get together as a team and put that together to get everybody focused on the project at hand. Okay, see, I want to show you some the different charting that it can do. The box and whisker plot, dot plot. Here's that multivary. Um, different kind of quadrant charts, scatter diagrams, and so on. One of my favorites is capability, looking at normal data, non-normal data. We'll see that in action here in just a little bit. There are different capability templates that you can use. Control charts. You do control charts for all the different variables. My chat box out of the way here so I can see this. You can do, different, all the different variables for individual moving range, X bar and R charts, X bar and S charts, and so on. Different attribute kind of charts. And then for either defects or defectives. And then the special charts. There's also a section in here on different control chart rules. If you've been in the quality game as long as I have, a lot of people started out with Western Electric rules, and they transition then to different rules. And there's different rules that you can use in order to help you calculate upper and lower control limits. A lot of capability there. Fishbone diagrams, action plans, the different matrix involved, different chart templates, different run charts for average, median, or dashboard, and of course, all the different Excel charts that you might be able to use. So those are the that's just a quick overview, give you an idea of the capability of QI macros. Now I want to show you some examples that I put together, and then after we show the examples, I'll take you to the website and let you take a look at it. So here's some variable data that I put together. There's 20 values in this data set, and one of the things that you want to do whenever you have some variable data is to look at that distribution and do what's called a statistical summary. So I'm going to do that, and the way you would do this is to come up here with QI Stat Wizard, and you'd click on it, and it will take you then to this Stat Wizard results. Now, since it takes just a few seconds, I'm going to just go ahead and click on this, and it will show you the results of that information. This is all 20 different values. Here's the data over here on the left-hand side, all 20 different values. And one of the nice things that it tells you right off the bat is if your data is normal or not. Now, if you're a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, hopefully you know that assessment of normality is based on the p-value. And once you go through in Stat Wizard, one of the first things that happens is it asks you the confidence level that you want. In this particular case, we're using 0.95 or 95% confidence, which means that if our p-value is greater than 0.05, our data is normal. And you can see here that the p-value is 0.069, greater than 0.05. Therefore, we can assume that our data is normal. It goes through and gives you the different statistics, the mean, the median, and the mode. It gives you the standard deviation and the variance. It tells you whether your data is skewed. In this particular case, because the skewness value is positive, that would mean that our data is skewed to the right. Our kurtosis is how flat or how peaked our distribution is. And since this value is negative, it means overall this distribution is relatively flat. There are 20 values in our data set, and you can see some of the other statistics. It gives you the confidence levels or the confidence intervals for the mean, the median, and the standard deviation. The line in blue here is the confidence interval for the mean, which is telling me over here on the left that the lower limit is 19.612 and the upper limit is 21.108. So that's the for the mean. Standard deviation, because the scale is different. The standard deviation confidence interval is 1.215 to 2.333. And you can see the one for the median also. Probability plot. This is just another way to look at normality. And now you say, well, there's not a lot of points that are on that line. But as again, if you're involved in Lean Six Sigma, there's that famous statistical test out there called a fat pencil test. And a fat pencil test would, if you had a fat enough pencil and you were able to cover those points, there would not be any values that fell outside of the off the line. One of the things that when I put this data in just randomly, you notice here in the tails is where you start to see some of the fall off, and that's not to be unexpected. Okay, I think I got a question here. I'll pull this over so I can take a look. So since QI macro is Excel based, am I to assume it can assess large external data sets, access data sets, or ODBC or other enterprise data sets? What, if any, are the limitations of data size with this tool? As far as I know, I have not had an issue with it. It's just like Excel. So as far as I know, there is no limitations. I've used it on thousands of data points in the past and not had any issue. So hopefully that, as far as I know, there aren't any issues. Okay, let me. Okay, so now once we go through and do this graphical summary, let's say that we want to go then and look at the capability of this process. And of course, in order to assess capability, we need to understand what our upper and lower spec limits are. So I'm going to assume for this presentation that our lower spec limit is 18 and our upper spec limit is 24. So I'm going to go to do the capability analysis, and I'm going to come up here to histograms and capability. And because I know that my data is normal, I get that right here from QI macros, and knowing too that the p-value is greater than 0.05, I can click on this normal, And I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to take you down here to the results. And this is what QI macros would display. In this particular case, you can see that the CP, we are using virtually um, all the spec width. In fact, we're using more than the spec width. Our spec limits are 18 and 24. So if we use our the formula and would calculate CP, we would get a value of 0.68, which means we're using more than our spec limit. If spec limit was, if our distribution was using um, just the same as our spec limit, then that ratio would be 1. Or since we're below 1, our variation is exceeding our spec limits. CPK, if you were to calculate that, would give you a value of 0.53. This particular case, since this thing is slightly um, CP lower is 0.53, so the one that you want to use in this particular case is the smaller of the CP lower or CP upper. There's other statistics here. It gives you the PPK, PP and PPK. Again, it tells you skewness, gives you the standard deviation, and so on. So a pretty nice summary of the capability. Let's see, let me see here if I have another question. Okay, I got time check. I got about 15 minutes left. Well, that's good because I'm going to switch over now and show you a simple one-way analysis of variance. I'm going to pop over here to ANOVA data. And this came right out of QI macros. This was an example that Jay Arthur used. Um, in this particular case, um, we're making paper bags. And we're looking at the strength of the bag based on the percentage of hardwood concentration in our paper bag mixture. So we looked at 4 different levels, 5% hardwood, 10% hardwood, 15%, and 20%. And we took 6 observations and measured the tensile strength of of our bag. You can see there that the 5%, the 10%, 15%, and 20. Now the question is the percent as the percent of hardwood increases, is that statistically significant? So that's what a one-way analysis of variance is going to look at here. It's going to tell you, is there a statistical difference between 5%, 10%, 15%, and 20%? So I would come up to, statistical tools, click on it, come down here to analysis of variance, analysis of variance single factor, and clicking down here on my results gives me, and we're testing this at a level of significance of 0.05. And here is the analysis of variance. You can see that the p-value is 0, which means that there is a statistical difference. The null hypothesis would be that all of the values or all the different concentrations are the same. Since they are not, the p-value is less than 0.05. If it was greater than 0.05, all the means would be the same. In this particular case, we're at 0 for our p-value, which tells us that the means are different. And one way to visually look at that is to look at the box plots. You can see the 5%, the 10%, 15, and 20%. These are the box plots of those 6 values. Now, is there a statistical difference between 10% and 15%? Well, then in this particular case, the answer would be no, because they overlap. But if I look at the 20% versus 15 or 5%, you can see that there is no overlap. So at least there's that statistical difference between 5% and 20%, and possibly the same between, um, well, no, I think that it would be at least these two values here. And we could run you know, a t-test for two sample t-test. Okay, I think I have one more question here. Um, does the does QI macro tool have the ability to identify outliers? If so, can it exclude them from the analysis performed? Um, it does have the ability to identify outliers. I don't know that we'll automatically do that. I think you have to exclude them manually. Once you identify that there are some, you would then you could exclude them and perform the analysis again. Okay, so with that, one of the things that the last thing I want to show you before I turn it back over to Jerry is the uh, QI Macros website. Let me take you to that. Get on Google Chrome. And here is the website. Now, what I like about his website, you know, he goes through and gives you the different tools. He gives you a summary. Um, he talks about, you know, statistical analysis and a lot of things that QI macros can do. Um, there are webinars and videos that he incorporates into his training. If you want to look it up and you know, look at more of the capability of QI macros, there are many videos out there. Different workshops that he has, um, free resources. Chat down here so I can see that myself. Um, there are, you know, Excel resources. He's got a monthly newsletter that he publishes, um, different user guides, and so on. So, you know, it's very self-explanatory, you know, and like I said, the best thing of all is the price of right at $300. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jerry and see if we have any other comments and questions.
Yes, yes. Well, so one question was really, have you found anything in that QI macros can't do that um, you would find in other tools? So is there anything um, that Minitab would do or do better than QI macros? How would you compare the two?
Yeah. One of the things that where it might fall short, and it does fall short, to be truthfully honest, but again, most black belts won't get into this level of, and they could, but typically not. For design of experiments, for instance, central composite designs, mixture experiments, response surface analysis, methodology, and so on. Um, QI macros, at least from my experience, doesn't have that capability.
Okay.
Looking at regression, for instance, if you were going to do best subset and some of those more advanced regression techniques, it would fall short in those areas also. But again, you know, um, probably 95% of the Lean Six Sigma projects don't require that. And so, again, looking at the price, if I had to provide a statistical analysis tool for the bulk of everybody, it would certainly be QI macros, and maybe the master black belt or some more proficient black belts might get another tool like Minitab.
Okay. Great. Great. And one other question, someone's asking, a lot of the previous training programs that have been out there really leverage or use the examples of Minitab, right? Um, do you, how can this be incorporated if, a class is using Minitab, or is it easily replaceable, and do you use it in your training sessions?
Yeah, we use this quite a bit. Like I said, it is something that we've used exclusively in our greenbelt training. In fact, we don't get into all the different tools and techniques even at the greenbelt level. Now, for black belt level, we're going to be transitioning to this because of the price. Minitab just increased the price um, here just recently. I think they came out with version 20. So there's quite a bit of difference in price. And so we're going to be going now to QI macros. And like I said, it's probably great for uh, 90% or so of the black belts out there. For more sophisticated techniques, if they need to get into central composite designs or advanced DOE or regression, then they can even Minitab has a 30, I think it's a free 30-day trial. If they need to get into some advanced technique, they can more than do that also.
Excellent. Okay. I hope that answered that question. Um, Wonderful. So is there anything else you can, tell us about QI macros, or when you started using it too? Because I find, this really has really come onto the scene. I've heard more and more about QI macros lately, and was just curious if, how new this tool is.
I've been exposed to it now for about the last 6, 7 years.
Okay.
And when I first came on board at corporate college, they were
Hmm.
using it in the at the greenbelt level. And I'm not sure when Jay actually introduced the product, but I would assume it's probably been on the market for at least the last 10 years.
Okay. Excellent. Well, anything that we can use to make our jobs easier and more cost effective, we're always looking for that, right?
Absolutely. And hey, the other thing that I just want to emphasize, um, you know, statistical analysis and statistical tools are great, but it does not, it isn't a substitute for people's ability to think. And, you can't just throw data in and not have um, some idea of what the data is telling you. That's the important thing. What's the data telling me? What's my analysis telling me? So that I make the right decision. Um, Statistics are great, but you got to analyze it, and it's not a substitute for the thought process, talking about it, understanding what's going on. What strategies am I going to use to solve my problems and improve my processes? So there's a whole lot more um, to doing any project other than just using statistical software. Although, you know, um, it sure does beat doing it by hand. I don't know if anybody here has ever done a lot of this stuff by hand. The way that, when I started my career, we were using just formulas and cranking numbers.
Oh my.
So thank God for QI macros.
Right. Absolutely. I can completely appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Jim. I'm sure everyone here on this webinar too truly appreciates what you shared with us today. And I think they're not only appreciative of the tool itself and what it can do, but the fact that you showed how much money it can save us as well when you invested this particular tool. So thank you. And would just like to say to everyone, uh, we want you to also remember, corporate college truly is here to serve you with these essential learnings. We want you to be able to overcome any challenges you may be facing right now, um, and know that together with our virtual classroom training programs, our self-paced online programs, and our, as you can tell, fabulous facilitators, we can provide, consultation services, training services, and coaching. So when you visit the corporate college website, You will also find our learnings available, like I said, in the classroom, virtual classroom format, and they range everything from Lean Six Sigma and things like the QI macros that Jim was talking about today, to our frontline leadership certificate program, into even healthcare, our patient access specialist program. And then it's not just for individuals too. So if you have a group of folks who you would like to provide a deeper dive into any of these topics, we can arrange a tailored session for your team. So please feel free to rewatch and share today's presentation by visiting our Corporate College free webinar series page. Visit it in the next few days by clicking on the free webinar series link. And please, always, you can stay up to date with us by following us on social media. So thank you so much, Jim. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.